Expectations are sky high in Chicago with Ben Johnson in town, but will Caleb Williams hold up his end of the bargain? We dig into the top 3 fantasy storylines for the Bears entering 2025 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
We are continuing to discuss every NFL team and going through their top 3 biggest fantasy storylines as we enter the 2025 season. Today, we are getting into the Chicago Bears, and we're going to go through the rest of the NFC North teams this week. And I mean, the Bears are a huge, interesting fantasy team this offseason with Ben Johnson, becoming the new head coach there, with Caleb Williams coming into his second season after a disappointing overall rookie season. And then with their just stacked receiver room in terms of both wide receivers and tight ends, especially after using their first 2 picks on a tight end and a wide receiver this year. So lots to dig into. Let's start right at the top with the biggest storyline, and it's, will Ben Johnson turn Caleb Williams into an elite quarterback? Because last year, I mean, for fantasy especially, quarterback 20 on average, that's not what we were expecting out of him. Only 15 fantasy points per game on average. Right now, he's sitting as the quarterback 13 in consensus rankings, sandwiched right between Justin Fields and Brock Purdy. I actually think he's an amazing value going into this year.
Yeah, I mean, QB 13, it seems like it's already a big ascension from where he finished last year. But look, everyone can see it. It's not a mystery here. They got Ben Johnson to run the offense. You got a bunch of weapons here. Look, they lost Keenan Allen and didn't want to bring him back, but it's a change in the offense where now they're going to use a lot of different looks here with Ben Johnson. He tends to mix up his personnel a lot more than they did in the previous iteration. So when we look at this, it's just a lot of good vibes here. They upgraded their offensive line. The entire interior was upgraded, and they're looking at tackle and maybe getting a little bit better there as well. So they are really committing all in on Caleb Williams in year 2 to try to get the results that in reality, the Commanders got right away with Jane Daniels, or even to the level of the Broncos with Bo Nix. I mean, they saw that. They said, we got to help out our quarterback. So they did that for sure. And really, above all the personnel adjustments and things they had, just getting Johnson, a legitimate play caller, to work with this quarterback is going to be rather special. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, you look at Jared Goff, it was a little bit of a slow progression in 3 years under Ben Johnson. He was QB 16 at first, QB 15, then he peaked on average at QB 8. So I'm not saying it's going to be snap your fingers and you get that production, but when we look at the physical talent straight up in the youth, Caleb Williams is a lot more talented specimen right now than Jared Goff is. I'll just clearly say that. So you have Justin Fields, which is interesting, the old quarterback in Chicago, because he's got the running cheat code there. But how effective is the passing part of Justin Fields going to deliver? And Brock Purdy, he doesn't give you too much running. He just got his new contract. We're still looking at some question marks on the table. It's not huge because they'll get it done with different weapons. But when you look at Caleb Williams, the weapons he has between DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, and adding another tight end, Colston Loveland, in the first round to Cole Kmet, you got Luther Burden. You got some depth on this team. You have a pretty good pass-catching back as well, DeAndre Swift. So a lot of things, assets in the passing game that can help Caleb Williams produce, and he's a pretty good runner. He's not a zero. He's going to take off at certain times. He can score touchdowns on the ground as well. So he's kind of a nice blend of really Fields and Purdy. What you get some of the Purdy drop back passing and some big plays you'll get from the Ben Johnson offense. And then you'll get the wrinkles of him running. They're not going to totally take that away, even though Johnson worked with Goff, who was just a statue in the pocket, to give you anything in the running game. So he's smart enough to adjust to that part of Caleb Williams' games, knowing he can extend plays to make some big plays downfield. So everything points to a big year from Caleb Williams. he's mega talented. We know that. He's the number 1 overall pick from last year. He was almost locked into being that pick early in his career, even going back to Oklahoma. So the talent is there, and talent usually rises when you have a competent level of coaching, and now you've got maybe the best young offensive mind in the NFL.
Yeah, and I do think he showed plenty of flashes last year to show us what he can become with better coaching. I mean, a lot of big games in there, 5 games with over 22 points, but he had a 28-point game as well, 26, 26, 24, 23. Like it just wasn't consistent. I will say you brought up the rushing, and that we need him to be a more consistent rusher too. It's not like we need him to put up 60 rushing yards a game, but 30 is nice. And he did have at least 30 yards in 9 games last year, with 5 of those games coming in week 11 or later. So he started to pick it up at the second half of his rookie season. And in those 9 games with at least 30 rushing yards, he averaged 19 fantasy points per game instead of the 15 that he averaged on the season. And also over the last 7 weeks of the season, he was the quarterback 4 overall in 3 of the last 7 weeks. So I do think we started to see some progression from him. Again, it wasn't consistent. Even towards the end of the year, he still had some really bad games and really bad fantasy games. But I do think Ben Johnson's system is going to make everything so much easier for Caleb Williams. It sounds like right now, with the news coming out that Eberflus, wouldn't watch tape with him or wouldn't help him at all, and the coaches just with the Bears in general just did not want to seem to help him progress at all as a rookie prospect. So it seems like it was just a mess with the Bears, like it always is. It doesn't mean Ben Johnson will be a good head coach. He might not be. There's been plenty of great offensive coordinators that did not turn out to be good head coaches. So maybe he's not able to, fix everything with Caleb Williams. But I do feel pretty strongly that he's going to have a really good season this year, and he's a great value. Like Bo Nix is sitting there at quarterback 8. I want Caleb Williams over Bo Nix all day, every day. Kyler Murray at 9. Give me Jared Goff at 10, absolutely Caleb Williams. Herbert and Caleb Williams is a very tough one. Where would you go there?
Oh, that's a really tough call. I mean, Williams, I think, might be a little bit steadier in a weird way. Like, I think Herbert might have a high floor, but he could also have some really low producing games because of that team being able to run the ball, where I think the Bears do want to pass the ball. I know Ben Johnson's created a very effective running game in Detroit, but they still want to get the big plays downfield. And he's a good adjustment guy where he's going to look at, hey, we're loaded with receivers. We want to get the ball downfield, push it. I mean, we saw that with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and Jamison Williams. So there's still a lot of explosiveness to be had. And again, Jared Goff's finish at 8 should tell you where Caleb Williams can go right away in this offense with his production. So it's tough, but I think if you're looking for actually more consistency, I think you have to go to Williams right now because his weapons – overall in the big picture and the passing volume will be a little bit higher.
So let me ask you, I actually don't think this is a hard decision based on cost. So Baker Mayfield at quarterback 6 or Caleb Williams at quarterback 13. I would much rather just wait on Caleb Williams. But let's say Baker starts to fall back a little bit. They start to get closer in cost. Baker or Caleb Williams?
I think I'd feel maybe a little bit comfortable with Baker. Let's just say if he drops to like QB9, right? Then you're looking at a decent value in relation. You're just looking for who's going to be the higher producer and how much more. It's hard to say, right? The X percentage more to be a so-called great value over this player, right? Sometimes you just look, okay, who do I feel the most comfortable with? And I think they're similar guys, right? Let's say you enter the draft and you say, hey, I'm going to target this person at this tier, right? That's how I would look at it. Like Baker Mayfield would be a good entry point before you get in some guys, and you'd say he comes after like Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen, and then maybe throw in Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow, right? And it's like, okay, great value for Baker Mayfield at that tier. Then the same thing, you talked about all those guys before, like, okay, I'm going to enter quarterback again, and I'm interested in Williams at 13 or whatever, right? So it's more, what do you get at that time where you've loaded other positions? But I think Williams would be one of those values, much like I think after that first tier, going after Mayfield and going after Williams after the third, quote, fourth tier, I think it would be a good spot as well for Williams.
Yeah. And I mean, Williams is going to have all the weapons he needs to find success in his second year. We were already happy with his weapons going into the draft, right? He already had DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet. And then they go into the draft this year and take Colston Loveland with the 10th overall pick, and then Luther Burden early in the second round. So now an offense that seemed like it might be easy to figure out for fantasy has gotten very crowded, and it's hard to know exactly who will thrive and who will not. But we are going to discuss all of those players and figure out their value right after a quick break.
All right. It can be really confusing to keep your life organized with all your upcoming events, especially if you have a lot of family members, not just you and your spouse, but you got kids stuff, especially this time of year. There's so much going on with sports in the spring and graduations and parties that you get invited to. Well, say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help your family, no matter what size it is, stay organized without the stress. The sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders, all in one easy to see place. That's always helpful, where you're not scrolling through something and trying to find out. You can see it all right there with Skylight Calendar. It's just right there. There's no more I didn't know. I didn't see it. Everyone's going to be able to see it with this display. And again, you got your own color for everybody in your house. There's colors for everybody. And then plans are not going to go missing here. We're going to see them. Everyone's going to know what's happening at any given time. It's so clear. And you get it on a 15-inch HD screen there. I mean, Skylight Calendar is really going to make everyone's life easier in your household. So check it out. Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off a 15-inch calendar by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's SkylightCal. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/NFL. Skylight calendars. Get yours today through this amazing offer. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show. And we thought we were going to figure out this Bears receiving core, but then they used a first-round pick on Colston Loveland, their second tight end after Kmet. And then they turned around and took Luther Burden III, a potential first-round wide receiver, in the second round. So now, basically, Keenan Allen's gone. These two guys got in here. And you have DJ Moore and Odunze and what they had last season. So I don't know where to go with this receiving core. I think I have an idea, but it's interesting to note that the scheme and who's going to be on the field is going to change quite a bit with these groupings here.
Yeah, right now DJ Moore is sitting as wide receiver 19 in consensus rankings. I am surprised he's that high with him being the wide receiver 28 on average last year, but he's going to get the Ben Johnson bump like most of these guys are. And we are only one season removed from him being the wide receiver 6 overall in fantasy in 2023. Only 28 years old, so still in the prime of his career. The thing is, like, he's got the same amount of targets from 2023 to 2024. He had 140 targets last year. That was 4 more targets than 2023. His yards per reception just went so incredibly down. 9.9 yards per reception when he's always typically been right at 14 yards per reception throughout his career. So I do think that will change instantly. Like he should get that. I think that was just an outlier year and a really bad offense overall. And then also we did start to see them click, Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, towards the end of the year. From weeks 12 through 18, DJ Moore was averaging 14.2 fantasy points per game. And then from weeks 1 through 11, it was only 9 fantasy points per game. So that 14.2 that he was averaging towards the end of the season, in the bottom third of the season, that was the same amount he averaged in 2023. So I don't hate his value at 19. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. But I will say, if I'm going to take a Bears wide receiver, which I do want a piece of this offense, I think I'm leaning more Odunze just because his value just seems so much greater at wide receiver 37 cost right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Michelle, because I'm known to talk about parallels, right? And we have to look at what Ben Johnson did in Detroit. Now, when you look at the personnel groupings, 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, the Bears were in that in 71.7% of instances there. So that was a lot. That was among the leaders in the league, I believe, in the top 10. But the Lions were only at 54.2%, one of the least frequent 11 personnel teams. They're actually in 12 personnel. That includes 2 tight ends at 32.2. So you're looking at about half the time where you're going to have 3 wide receivers on the field. And this is why, again, they got Colston and Loveland. Now they have Colston, Loveland, Cole Kmet. So DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are going to be on the field quite a bit. So you can still operate a player in the slot then. And then if you look at these two and you try to, again, correlate them to the Lions, you do have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. Who's the big play threat of this group? That's DJ Moore. He's the field stretcher. He's the speedy guy. You talk about his yards per catch. I think that would make sense to use him a lot like Jameson Williams. And look, he was plenty productive. But you look at Rome Odunze, look, DJ Moore has never been a slot guy all that much. So you did use him a little bit in that role. And the interesting thing is you had, I think, around 27% usage of Rome Odunze in the slot, which, again, throwing all these numbers, why it's important, because you had, I guess, Amon-Ra St. Brown was a dedicated slot, but he was about a 45% guy last couple of years on average. So that means they are using him outside more than people think. And Rome Odunze could have that versatile role, right? So when you look at that, that's great news for Odunze. And DJ Moore is going to be maybe the big play guy, but we know Williams also was very productive in fantasy last year because they were able to get the big plays because they set them up with the running game, offensive line, and then, of course, what St. Brown was doing underneath. So it all lines up well for both these guys. I think they could be really good values each. DJ Moore, again, 19, he just might score at 19. But you're looking at Rome Odunze at wide receiver 37, you could get an absolute steal. Right now, he's ranked outside the top 36. That puts him out of the wide receiver threes. But everything says, Michelle, that they're going to use Odunze a lot. It also means that Luther Burden is not going to be a big factor as a rookie at all based on the personnel grouping. So when you think about all that, I think Odunze, easy, great value. But I'll say that Moore and Odunze are both good guys to target because they're going to be the primary receivers on this team. And you have to keep in mind, Loveland is still a rookie. So, again, they might not be eager to put him out in routes constantly, right, as he comes back from injury as well. So, again, Odunze, Moore, I like both of them quite a bit. And I think you might end up with two very nice wide receiver twos when you come out of it.
Yeah, I really, Odunze's value, I can see him being a top 20 fantasy wide receiver this year. I mean, he had 101 targets last year. That should increase right away with Keenan Allen gone. I know they brought in some guys, but you still expect him to get more target opportunity. And the way they were using him last year, it was like basically run deep and that's it. His air yards per target were at 13.7, second highest among players last year behind Calvin Ridley only. And that really ruined his catch percentage too. Like they just weren't hitting on those 53% catch rate for Rome Odunze last year. Like even just based off that, like hopefully Ben Johnson knows how to use Rome Odunze better and not just have him run deep over and over and over again. Yeah, he's going to be a lot more creative with him. Odunze is a really great prospect coming out of school. That's why he was the 9th overall pick in the 2024 draft. Like I'm really, really excited to see what we can get from him, and he will be on pretty much every single one of my teams, especially if he stays anywhere near this cost. Now, you brought up Luther Burden. We're both not expecting much from him as a rookie. Wide receiver 55 rank. The thing with him, I didn't love him as a prospect for fantasy, no matter, depending on landing spot, of course, but then the landing spot is also bad. But he's a very gimmicky guy where you need to scheme him a lot of targets to get that production out of him. I just don't think the Bears will need that this year. Now, Colston Loveland, you brought up, he's also coming back from injury. And I think that's something people are overlooking because right now he's the tight end 15 in consensus ranks. For some reason, ranked ahead of Tyler Warren, the other rookie tight end who went early in the draft this year to the Colts. But he's not going to be able to even perform in any drills until training camp at the earliest. And he's not allowed to have any contact allowed for 6 months after his shoulder surgery that he had on January 29th. So that gets you into August. I just think it's going to be really hard for him to catch up and be ready to take on this huge role immediately as a rookie when it's already hard for rookie tight ends to do that. I don't want to take Colston Loveland in redraft leagues where, you just have him during his rookie season.
Yeah, it's really hard. The Loveland Kmet thing kind of hurts both of their value because you're not quite sure how much Kmet is going to still maintain his key role. You're not quite sure when Loveland is going to return and be a factor. So I would kind of avoid this tight end situation as much as possible. If I'm going to do anything, based on the cost, I might just take a flyer and Kmet late in drafts. Like if I'm stuck, just say if Loveland has a setback or something, then you might be having a very key receiver on this team. But again, otherwise not that interesting. Luther Burden, it seems pretty high to me. And this is where I think we need to make the adjustment. Like he's a wide receiver 5. No, that's like too expensive to use that kind of a pick. I mean, that's a valuable pick that you can use in another position to get some depth. I mean, this guy's almost going to give you nothing. I get in different kind of formats with Dynasty and Keeper, like you're going to have to wait a while to get some return on these guys. As Michelle mentioned, DJ Moore is still very young. Odunze is a second-year first-round pick, so he's obviously very young. So it's going to be a while for Burden to have a significant role based on the personnel they're using. So I think that's a wasted pick. I think what you're going to see where the Burden production goes, give a little bit more to Odunze, give a little bit more to Moore. That's what's going to happen here. So bump up those guys, take away from where he's ranked, Burden, and now you're starting to think about where the Bears offense really go. But I'm really excited. That trio is going to be good. And if I'm looking at season-long stacks, Michelle, I'm going to be very interested. Like I had the Jane Daniels, Terry McLaurin type combination. I'd love to get a piece of the Bears like this with Caleb Williams, with Moore or Odunze. I think you're really looking good. So as crowded as it seems, it's actually going to be kind of streamlined to 2 players more often than not in this offense. So it actually works out pretty well, but it's really nice for Caleb Williams, however, to have that diversity of weapons.
Yeah, it is. And I'm right with you. I'm going to have Caleb Williams with Rome Odunze on quite a lot of my teams. Now, there's also in the backfield, there's a really interesting option for fantasy with DeAndre Swift. I mean, his value right now is looking really great too at running back 21. It looks like he's going to be the clear lead back for this team unless they add someone late here in the offseason. But let's dig into DeAndre Swift's potential in 2025. Can he be a top 12 running back? We will discuss to end today's show. All right, let's finish up today's show talking about DeAndre Swift and his potential this season. He's sitting at running back. I said 21 earlier. He's actually sitting at running back 27 in current consensus rankings. Way too low, especially since he was a running back 21 on average last year, and it was a bad year for him, right? It was a bad year for this entire Bears offense pretty much, but especially for DeAndre Swift, who had the opportunity to be the clear lead back last year. But if we're bumping everyone else up in this offense, saying Ben Johnson's going to be able to fix it, right? And they fixed up their offensive line. I mean, made huge used a lot of capital on getting this offensive line fixed this offseason. That should be great for DeAndre Swift, who had 295 touches last year. I do think that running back 27 rank is just way too low for him as well.
Yeah, and the Bears haven't really done anything. We were going from, they might use a pick on Ashton Genty to Marion Hampton to like, are they going to sign Nick Chubb, to nothing so far. Well, it's not nothing. They did draft a 7th rounder out of Rutgers, Kyle Monagai. So, look, unless he's the next Isaiah Pacheco coming out of the Scarlet Knights, we're not going to see him as a major threat to this backfield, especially with Roschon Johnson in between kind of as the power back role. Now, the interesting thing, Michelle, you had 75 targets total around that number for the Bears backs last year in the offense. The Lions back, almost just by Jahmyr Gibbs alone, had that many targets. I think he had 68, somewhere there. And as a team, they had 134 targets. So Ben Johnson is going to use the running back a little bit more, and you tend to do that, right? If you're going to use 12 personnel, you got to have a tight end in the block. You need to get some extra receivers into routes, and one of those is typically the running back. So when we look at this, I mean, this is great. The funny thing is, another weird stat, 70 targets. DeAndre Swift, actually, if people forgot, he had one crossover season in Detroit with Ben Johnson. He got 70 targets that year. He caught 48 for 389 yards and 3 TDs. Now, he had only 52 targets with the Bears last year, 42 for 386. So the numbers were very similar in receiving from what he had with Ben Johnson last time to what he has coming in before Ben Johnson's arrival. So very interesting, but that tells me, again, they want to use him a lot more. Like if he can keep up that catch rate and it goes up more, I mean, and right now, Roschon Johnson's not the greatest pass catcher. So you figure if anything comes out of the backfield, Swift is going to catch most of them. So easily he could push past 85 targets, something like that on his own. And then you're looking really good if he keeps up the catch rate and the kind of the efficiency of Caleb Williams getting him the ball. Now you're really looking good, right? And that's before you get the power running. Now, I've been rooting for DeAndre Swift. Like, it started out well in Detroit. He was looking great for him. Then we thought, oh, he's looking great in Philadelphia. He's a Philly kid. Oh, he's going to be what Saquon Barkley was last year. Didn't happen in 2023. He just kind of fizzled out. So then he got the chance last year. Wasn't all that good, partly because of things around him. Now he's got the offensive line. He's got the play caller. He's got the quarterback. He's got the backfield to himself where people think he's a lead for sure. So, look, I don't know. If DeAndre Swift cannot come through in this scenario, which is somehow better than the last couple of years, I don't know. Maybe it's just not. He's just not good enough and durable enough to get this done. But it's all there for the taking. And I do like the idea of DeAndre Swift. Now we need the execution of DeAndre Swift to show up.
Yeah, this is definitely his last year to be able to prove himself. If he still can't do it now, then it's just done. But yeah, he brought only 52 targets last year. Definitely a room to increase there. Yeah. And his yards per reception at 9.2 yards per reception. That's fantastic for a running back. Only Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, and then weirdly Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery averaged more yards per reception than Swift did last year. So that's another thing. Like, I don't think it's just David Montgomery and Jahmyr. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs is electric and amazing, but David Montgomery averaging that many yards per reception as well. That's a Ben Johnson thing too, right? So I do expect Swift to be very efficient as a receiver, get more targets, and it's going to come down to how well he can perform on the ground when he gets the carries, because last year he wasn't efficient enough. So we'll see if the offensive line can help him be more efficient. Can he score more rushing touchdowns and all of that good stuff? But I do think his value is great too. It just seems like as you go across the board here with the Chicago Bears players, they just have really, really good values, even though they're getting a lot of hype. So definitely will have a lot of Bears on my team this year, and I'm excited to see what they can do this season. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be back tomorrow talking about the Detroit Lions and the opposite of the Bears. They lost Ben Johnson, so how will that affect them? We'll get into their top 3 storylines tomorrow. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.